動画を大きくしたりちっちゃくしたり、そんな仕事ばっか。
Hey, still better than be a content creator, am I right? We open with the one character who can automatically make any of my issues with this show disappear, good old Bumby. He was inspecting a dilapidated old apartment complex.
こちらの団地のリノベーションに際してチェックに参りまして。
Yeah, we even got some rapper from the 90s to come in and spruce things up a bit. And as we learned later in the episode, the tenants of the building were mostly elderly people unable to move beyond their old homes. It was a location that could represent everyone's, the owner, the tenants, and even the government's apathy towards these old complexes and getting them fixed up, as well as Japan's aging population problem that doesn't produce enough fresh blood to suggest refurbishment projects rather than letting these locations die on the vine. Needless to say, this is an Isamu Murayama script. But yeah, when we say apathy, it of course means that we end up with a squash bee. This is why we can't have nice things. Meanwhile, Mai was recollecting the end of the last episode when they met up with the S5 team. Now, of course, they revealed their connections with the owners of this bistro, being former classmates, meaning that this meeting between the Cure teams was likely more coincidence. I mean, not everything has to be destiny, Kurumi. They explained each other's occupations that we'll get more into in just a bit, though I do like this little detail that Saki provides the bread for this place, which makes sense, as you may as well get from a supplier who's a trusted friend. What might not be as acceptable a detail was...
婚約指輪あの彼と婚約したんだね。
Well, there go all the Saki/Mai ships. Like seriously, am I the only one who felt like Mai was staring daggers into her former partner here? They even cut to a scene where she was breaking up with her own boyfriend, and yet it kind of felt like Saki was the one saying this. Like, am I crazy for thinking that? And you know what, don't answer that. Also, very clever symbolism here with a smartphone stand ring. But yeah, we had cut over to Mai's job at an advertising company where her job was graphic design, like making their stuff stand out more. And again, Murayama, so of course they did bring in some very sensible and realistic talks about this sort of stuff. For instance, all Mai really did to make their ad better was enlarge their logo, which, yeah, as lame as that sounds, it is often a part of the average designer's work. We'll get more into that in just a bit. However, some things in the workplace ended up unintentionally standing out more.
来月から関根さんが産休に入るので。
Huh, so Sora's VA is pregnant? That would explain why they're taking a break next week. Looking at her made one of Mai's co-workers feel like they had wasted their time in college if ultimately they were just going to be singles with some low-tier jobs that didn't justify their degrees while some of their friends managed to become YouTubers. Well, how very South Park of you, Precure.
Wasted our time! College! Piece of shit, college!
Nah, but seriously, this is the kind of stuff I really wanted to see in an adult Precure show. A show where not everything has to play out exactly like something out of the original show, but rather addressing some very down-to-earth issues that we all have to face, especially as we become adults in workplaces where we feel overqualified, as we had worked and paid so much for college and yet still ended up with a 2-bit job. And God, I just made myself feel depressed. But yeah, in short, you can really feel like this episode was written by a very different writer who actually wanted to take this franchise in some unique directions. In turn, I do kind of wish that the animation here was a little better, like, not to be rude, but am I the only one who thinks Mai and Saki look a tad bit chubby in this scene? Maybe y'all should lay off the bread. But yeah, as it turned out, the S5 team had forgotten to tell the former Splash Stars about the Shaos due to all of Saki's engagement talk. As a result, they did need to get some other allies in on this, like someone we'll see later in this episode, as well as, well... So, anyway, Mai and Saki decided to hang out for the day, as the former's boss was telling her to start using up her paid vacation days. Again, a very realistic aspect about adulthood. Like, come on, you don't think I want to cash in on some of those vacation days, boss? Anyway, they ended up at the apartment complex from the prologue, where they did the commentary we talked about earlier. Though, of course, the two ladies talked about themselves, in particular Mai's issues. They had a great talk, and again, while it is a legit pity for anyone who was a shipper between these two, it at least opened up some very serious issues for these women who were under the impression that their biological clocks were starting to tick down. Which, yeah, Saki kind of rightfully pointed out that her friend was worrying more about social norms rather than issues that she was truly invested in. I would say her stuff with her boyfriend was at least a decent issue, but yeah, completely comparing herself to others of her age were ultimately kind of pointless. If she's not bothered by how simple her graphics design job is, then really what's there to complain about? Again, really good writing here that I don't know why it took us 4 episodes to get, and also us moving away from the main team, but at least we got it, right? Of course, the actual magical girl stuff still had to show up in the form of the shadows, which of course, based off of the eye catch complete with some old music from Splash Star, totally confirmed that we were going to see yet another team of Cures age regressing for a big stupid fight and...
Nope.
Yeah, actually, these two didn't age regress or transform at all, which, as we'll talk about in the closing thoughts, I kind of prefer. Also, in case you're wondering how I thought they could have gotten around the fact that Choppy's VA had passed away 8 years ago, rest in peace by the way, I honestly thought that they were just going to replace her with someone like Saori Goto, who practically has the same voice as Miyu Matsuki.
いきなり取締体制を強化したのですか？私が取締りを厳しくしているのは。
But yeah, instead, they had to run away from these guys, which wasn't easy when you don't have your phone on silent.
こっちもごめん、今手が離せなくて。
Turn off your phone in the residential area. It's rude.
Fortunately, the absolute best character in the show, bar none, was there to help and ad-lib the hell out of the scene. Eventually, and very appropriately for the season, they went full Dawn of the Dead by trying to escape atop a shopping mall before being rescued not by a helicopter, but rather a big orange bird. Yeah, I think I still prefer the original proposed ending. And as for Bumby, he proved that he was the absolute Giga Chad, who even referenced his original unplanned survival from the original series. Hell, he was the only one who recognized that after something like that, you need a tall beer rather than just water to toast to. But yeah, another nice narrative aspect about this episode was the fact that this was one where the Precure legit were unable to do anything to stop the shadows, as the apartment tenants were all put into comas, and the buildings themselves were likely going to be totally abandoned now. Though the worst news of all was that Bumby claimed that he wasn't going to get involved anymore. I mean, obviously he is, but still, come on, he should just be the main hero of this show at this point. However, even without powers, the former Splash Stars agreed to help, even using some old footage that was obviously being zoomed in on to match widescreen. With that, the episode ended with Mai fully breaking up with her boyfriend, and absolutely nothing else happening, and oh god, I'm afraid of the comment section next week. Yeah, this was easily my favorite episode of the series so far. I'm not gonna lie, the straightforward Precure stuff was kinda taking me out of the series, as it was just turning this into yet another typical magical girl anime, rather than an actual sequel showing how these characters had grown beyond those years. Thus, I'm actually glad that they subverted my expectations with the Splash Stars, and actually made an episode that felt more like what they were doing with the first one of the series. Really, I wouldn't mind at all at this point if Isamu Moriyama took over the rest of this series. I mean, I know he's gonna be busy with Mahotsukai 2 next year, but really, even if we are to go back to the more traditional Precure stuff next week, I just think he has much better concepts for this show that should be addressing actual adult issues rather than piling on with the environmental messages or just kind of repeating stuff we had already seen in the original shows. We already went over most of the very real workplace issues that they brought up, but Mai's turbulent relationship with her boyfriend was relatable for anyone unsure whether or not to break things off with their significant other, and how much everyone else's relationship was affecting their own choices. Like, is it more expected that you should not only be in a relationship, but also pumping out babies at this point? The answer, of course, being that it all depends on the individual. Sure, there is an eventual biological point of no return, but no one should feel pressured to committing to anything they're not comfortable with. That's just some really good direct commentary, as well as some good subtle commentary here about Japan's aging population issues with the apartment complex. And again, the fact that this episode had them technically losing this battle actually raised the stakes more than anything Hero Sky has done recently. And of course, nothing needs to be said about Bumpy, as anything with him makes this an automatic 11 out of 10. However, even if he wasn't in this episode, this was still overall the most well-written episode of the series so far. The former Splash Stars will probably remain former, but they're still heroines in their own right, as they highlight the real issues, like why did we even go to college in the first place. Even though I am starting to get a little used to doing 2 reviews on the weekend, it's still pretty rough stuff. Fortunately, there's going to be no Hero Sky next week, so you can actually expect the next review to come out sometime next Saturday night. So, look forward to it. Until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and, oh, gotta get back to calculating those books. My real job is accounting, so sometimes you just have to get used to being an adult.